week, we focus on the passions of pro wrestling, the journey of pro wrestling, and everything in between, from training to favorite matches to the who, what, why, when, where, different things of the nature. However, this week we have a very unique story of passion. We have the tale that we all love, but in detail. You grow up being a wrestling fan and you go to shows and you go to matches and you have the best seats and you interact with the wrestlers and you feel like a part of the program. Then add to the fact that your father's involved in a promotion. Then add to the fact that you at one point say, Dad, I want to do this. Now you're literally training amongst the men that you've been watching since you were a fan. And now you're having your first matches and moments with some of those same wrestlers and characters and pundits. This is the journey of beautiful Buddy Thomas. The following conversation is scheduled for one fall. And joining me this week is beautiful Buddy Thomas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Cheyenne.
Absolutely. I just want to have your reaction focus as I gave you that intro. So how long now have you been wrestling?
I started training 4 years ago in 2020, right before my 18th birthday, and I had my debut match May 1st of 2021.
In Lake Hopatcon, because I was there.
Yes.
In Lake Hopatcon, I was there. Remind me, who did you work your first match?
My first match was against Lucky Leo Alvaro.
Right. Did you? So it's your first match. I don't know what your expectations are. I've been around a lot of people that have had who tell me about their first matches, but I actually got to experience yours. And there's a handful of people that I've actually got to experience their first matches. I usually get people after they've had a handful of matches or when they want to get away from their schools and trainers. In your case, with your first match, in the moment were you satisfied? And in retrospect, watching it back, even if you watched it back recently, were you like, oh man, this isn't that great? What was your in the moment and then your hindsight reaction to your first match?
So I think in the moment, it was more like I felt accomplished because I waited so long just to get it, just to have that moment where I had my first match. So I think looking back at it now, I'm proud of that as its own accomplishment. I'm proud that I had my first match. But if I'm going to watch it today, I'd say I've definitely come a long way in those 3 years. From gear to gimmicks, it's definitely changed me a lot.
Oh yeah, even in the 3 years, because it's funny because I kind of have that 5 year rule with wrestlers. I feel like every 5 years is when indie wrestlers kind of change their look or their style. All of a sudden they don't want to be this anymore. They want to be that. But it takes 4 or 5 years into it. But even then, seeing your evolution has been wonderful. I want to talk. So you grew up a fan of wrestling, and your post territories, your post Monday Night Wars, obviously. When did you realize going to ECPW matches? Were you strictly going to ECPW because your dad, Matt Lynch, who's got this amazing voice for ring announcing, shout out to him? Were you strictly going to ECPW, or were you going to WWE shows, other indies? What was your fan experience like before transitioning to the other side?
So the story of how I got to ECPW, even for the first time as a fan, Northeast Wrestling was going to have a show Friday night, April 25th of 2015
Okay.
in Newburgh, New York. And it was going to be Matt Hardy and John Morrison. And Thursday night, the show got canceled.
Wow.
Yep. Thursday night, the show got canceled. So
Was it because of weather, or do we know why?
I don't know the exact reason, but they canceled the show. It must have been something with the school or something like that. But my dad started looking up local shows because this was the first show I was going to probably in like 2 or 3 years.
Because your
So
dad's
he's
been a lifelong fan. He's got the best house show stories. I got a great connection with your dad.
yeah. So he's looking up shows all over the place, and he finds ECPW, and it was going to be our first night out watching wrestling with each other in probably like 2 years or so, I'd say.
Wow.
So we went and watched Andrew Anderson and Frankie Flo in the main event of the Paramus Elks Lodge.
And what's that like?
I mean, it was definitely, 10 years ago now, and now I'm wrestling these guys every weekend. It's insane.
Yeah. Now so this is 10 years ago. So this is 2014, 2023, right?
Yeah.
2014, 2013 rather. So you're getting Drew pretty much still on that high of the wrestler and all that notoriety. Is Flo Jr. wrestling yet?
Yeah, they were tag team champions, and Frankie also had the heavyweight championship.
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds about right. Because I think after Frankie is Dan the Man's reign, all right? Because he had it for the longest time.
Yeah, Dan the Man had it for a couple of years.
Yeah. I remember when I first got acquainted into the business. I'm pretty sure that was Gino's champion for ages. He had it. It felt like forever. It might have been across two reigns, but
I
Dan
think it
had it. It
was
felt like forever.
2016 till I think when Kenny got it in 2019 ish.
Yeah, and he might have had a run before that, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I can remember when I met he's on the milk cartons now, but Aaron Bradley, when I met Prince, when I met Sonny, when I met that class of kids, the new gen. Um, I want to say he if he wasn't the champion, he was certainly in the picture. He was on the chase. Because that's Gino books around as champions because that's the old school territory way of booking. Um, so when do you have the conversation and you tell your dad? Is your dad already ring announcing? And when do you say, I want to do this?
So
Because you're
I
also involved with shows, right? You start like doing like you're carrying people's stuff to the back. You're kind of a gopher, if you will, because your dad's the ring
yes.
announcer for the shows.
Yeah. So I think I knew I wanted to be a wrestler way before we even started going to ECPW, but once we found ECPW and found out that they have their own school and their own training program, like it became more of okay, that's where I'm going to get my start.
It became a reality almost.
Yeah. So once my dad started ring announcing, he started ring announcing first in the Hudson Valley area, and then he transitioned over to New Jersey. So Tim Theory hooked me up, and one night they needed someone to play music. So I was like, all right, how hard could it be? Like you press the button, that's it.
Yeah.
So he teaches me how to do that. I probably did that for about 3 years, probably from like 2018, 2017 till 2020 until I
Did you
started
mess
refing.
up?
I probably the first couple shows, but then I got like a system and a
Sure.
system down.
Yeah, when I did music the first time, I messed up.
Yeah, I always messed up like this one guy's music, Migs, because his music wasn't in the iPod or I couldn't find it. So I would
Yeah.
always I would just play whatever. And it's just been our little running joke how I never played his entrance music.
Plus, I love ECPW, but the technology there is primitive. Let's just leave it at that. I'm sure it was even more so when you were there 10 years ago. Since I just heard an iPod, so that tells me everything I need to know right there. Um, how's your dad's reaction to I want to wrestle, I want to train, and what does Gino say?
Well, of course Gino's gonna say yes. I mean, Gino wants another student. My
Right.
dad my dad of course was pushing for me the whole time. I mean, as soon as we found ECPW, that's where I was gonna start and there's no stopping me from going.
Did you consider other schools? Because now, considering where you are in New York, House of Hardcore is no longer a school. There is no HC Loke hadn't opened his school yet out there in I think Mayflower. So you really had to do Jersey. So you could have done Monster Factory, you could have done Geno's. If you wanted to take the trek down to the five boroughs, you could have done Johnny Rod's, which probably would have tickled your dad's interest. Uh, were there other schools in contention, or just because of the fact that you were associated with ECW, it was like that's it?
Yeah, once I was working with ECPW and everything like that, it was just ECPW is going to be where I get my start. For respect of Gino and everything like that, I was not going to go and pay my money elsewhere. It just wasn't going to happen.
So let's talk the planning for your trajectory to get to your first match. What was your training like? How formal is it? How involved is Gino? Are the kids? Are there other kids training with you? Are guys giving you flack for being, the gopher, and now you want to do this? What was your experience training like in terms of your environment? Because obviously you got through it very well.
So I started with everyone pretty much before me knowing me already. So I walked in with everyone knowing who I was, and I think
Sure.
that could have possibly rubbed some people the wrong way, thinking that I'm getting special treatment, all that. But I feel like it made me have to work so much harder to impress them. Like so many guys, from what I've heard, like they'll do the gopher stuff for a couple months, and then they're like, "All right, I'm gonna train," and
Yeah.
they last 5 6 months, and they're out. 4 years later, they can't kick me out. I'm gonna keep doing this.
Now, do you feel like did you feel like you got special treatment, or did you feel like, because now it's more comfortable, or did you feel like Gino was working you extra hard because he expected more from you?
Um, I
Or do you
kind of
feel
feel
like he just treated you like a regular student?
I feel like I got treated like a regular student, but I think I definitely got. I had to wait longer for my debut. I feel like Gino's always said there was no rush. So while other people I was starting with debuted maybe 5 6 months in, I started 9 months in.
Yeah.
So I had to wait a couple extra months, and I didn't mind it. Like the day I was told I was wrestling my first match, me and Tristan Law went down to the school Tuesday, and he's like, I think Brian's ready for his first match. Gino's like, no, 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 we'll wait it off. We'll wait it off. I go back to the school on Thursday. He's like, how do you think of wrestling May 1st in Hopatcon? I was like, I'll be there. So it's
Now,
kind of,
you got that voter conference from Tristan, who I love. He's one of my closest friends in the business. Did you feel like people were looking out for you, that they were rooting for you by the time you got done with your training?
definitely. I think the night of my debut, it was definitely everyone's watching around the curtain because they all want to see, okay, this kid that's been around here for 6 7 years at this point, let's see how he does.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrew Anderson's there watching, Prince is watching, Frankie Flo's watching, Junior Flo, Tim Theory. Who else was there that night? You were there.
Tarzan Duran's there, Bangles there,
Yeah, so I think
Wally's there.
pretty much everyone's watching, and
Yeah.
they just want to see how the kid that they all knew for like 6 years is going to do when he debuts in the ring.
And you might not remember this, but Sonny Kiss and Mark Quinn are there
Yes.
in that back corner.
Yep.
That was also my first spot show for ECBW too. It was like a Pat Kong, and then I spent the whole summer with you guys, you in particular, obviously. What a great time that was. Now, you got to progress rapidly because on top of your training, which you continue now, which I can't stress enough, like wrestling is obviously on the job training, but that doesn't mean you stop your in-ring training also. I mean, all the greats still train on a regular basis, and I
Yep.
think that's part of why you've gotten so good so quick. What was that summer like for you? Because you're wrestling every weekend, at least one match, sometimes 3 matches, and then by the end of that year, you're doing loops. So, did you feel like you were getting a fast education compared to other students who were being impatient or just wanted to do matches and not get better?
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of things just fell on my lap. Once I started wrestling, Gino was like, "All right, there's opportunities on the truck. Are you available?"
Yeah.
And for the past 3 years, I've never said no. I just say yes to everything that comes up. I'll take any opportunity I can. And I was on every single truck for any kind of show that there could be. Uh, Lucha shows in Queens, outlaw wrestling, anything with any way to get on a show, try and help out. I mean, it's what got me to 299 matches at this point.
The other thing too, and I don't think Gino's going to realize this until, and I don't mean this in a bad way, until you're successful, until you're on television or national. That was a big transition period for him too. He was making a lot of new champions. He was in the middle of a lot of championship reigns that were kind of winding down, and he had a lot of students that were starting out, be it as refs, training with you, and you're kind of like one of the last of the Mohicans, right? Of that class of that year.
Yeah.
You went all the way. A lot of people just, I know by the end of the year they just stopped coming.
I'd say probably the last three that are left from that class would be me, Drew Marston, and Tamir Gibbs.
Yeah, because I forget that they're very much in that conversation with you, and I think that's why you guys have such a great bond, because you're also ring truck guys, also.
Yes.
And Tamir is is sensational and getting better and better with his character development. Drew Marston, honestly, is such an underrated worker right now. I just wish that there was a gimmick that he could tap into, because you could tell as a person Drew commits. He just hasn't found what to commit to. My opinion, and I love Drew. I want success for all you guys. So, talk to me about Midnight Delight. How does that happen? Because you're having a pretty impressive rookie year. But in that rookie year, the decision's made for you to be a tag team. Were you okay with that? Were you like, I kind of want to do my own thing right now? Because I also think that helped you progress.
So I think they were doing the Hudson Valley Tag Team Tournament, and it was going to be me and Bobby C teaming up in the tag team title tournament. And then I think Bobby wasn't available or something like that for one of the shows. So Gino put me with Paulie. Me and Paulie do the match, 2 matches I think that night, and we won both, or won one, lost the other, something like that. And our gimmicks were so alike that Gino was just like, okay, this works. And then we go on to these other rentals and stuff like that, because Paulie was driving Gino around. So we would go to the rentals and Gino would be like, all right, you two are going to team tonight to wrestle these two. And he just kind of started liking the team. And by the summer, we're wrestling SCK for the tag team titles.
I feel like by the time you guys got to that summer, to the school shows, you guys had the act fairly down.
Yeah.
And then you guys start doing the matching gear and stuff like that. And of course, the Jersey Jewel. What do you think is the reason that you and Paulie fit so well in the ring? Because it can't just be because you guys look the same and have similar. There's a synergy when you guys team. You guys are great together.
I think it's the age difference. It has to be. Paulie goes in there. He does the easy gimmicky stuff. I go in there and I whine, cry, complain, do the stuff that he can't do. I'm the whiny little kid and he's the tough, angry, good-looking adult. And I think that just kind of is what makes us kind of a good team.
Now, speaking of team and presentations and things like that, you guys worked SCK, the Flows, Ryman and various revolving door partners, Prince and various revolving door partners. Who do you guys think you got the best matches out of as a team? Because I got to see you guys work everybody. Some nights, you got to work some lesser experienced teams and stuff. Do you feel like you had magic with one team more than another out of everybody?
I think the most that we learned from was SCK, Kenny Bangle and Bulldog Pittman,
who at that point are 10-year veterans, I think.
Yeah, at least Kenny. Pittman started 20...
Kenny's a 10-year. Pittman's like 4?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is right near us leading into that triple threat TLC match with Love is Pain.
That's right.
So I think from August until December, we wrestled SCK probably about 6-7 times. And Kenny was definitely a huge help on getting me and Paulie into actually having tag moves and learning how to do tag matches properly, because for a while we were just doing whatever out there and it wasn't all that good.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to say that it wasn't, I get it because I can be critical of myself too. I don't want to say that it wasn't good, but it was like 2 single acts on the same stage. There wasn't that team cohesiveness yet. Yeah. You guys were getting by in tag matches in the beginning, but you weren't a team yet. You were just 2 guys going out, doing your singles act. But obviously it took a couple dress rehearsals to get the act down together. So I can understand that. Do you Midnight Delight's a lot more infrequent these days. Do you miss the team? Do you think you guys should have had a tag title run over there at ECPW? Would you do it again? Where are you at in terms of tag team wrestling, specifically with Paulie and even in general?
So, I mean, of course, tag team wrestling is great. It's fun. But selfishly, I enjoy having singles matches a lot more. Tag team wrestling, it's different. It's fun. And if it's a way to get on the show, I'll take it. I'm never going to say no. If the Midnight Delight is going to wrestle as a team, fine. That's great. Me and Paulie are wrestling mainly in ECPW together and occasionally ACW every other month or so. But that's it. Everywhere else, I'm by myself wrestling in singles. So I'm starting to get used to that and finding a gimmick singles ish with the umbrella. So it kind of just has to like find a way where we kind of fit back together and see if the puzzle pieces fit that way.
Speaking of the puzzle pieces, you kind of came out and you kind of had like when you first started, you start out with a little bit of Bobby Eaton and Rick Martel in your presentation with the stars and the black and silver and stuff like that. When did you realize you had to change your look? Because then that kind of evolved into the original Zack Ryder look with the one-legged pants, which makes you stand out, absolutely. Then that goes into kind of like the hot stuff, Eddie Gilbert stuff, because then you're doing the flames and all that. Talk about the evolution of your presentation and what the ethos of that was.
So I think, of course, everyone can kind of tell that I'm a huge Zack Ryder fan. I hit the Rough Rider as my finisher, the Broski boot. I wore his gear for what now? Almost a year with the one-legged pants.
Yeah.
So he's just definitely been like an inspiration of that. And I took a bunch of different. I took Zack Ryder for gear and moves, Ric Flair, Bobby Eaton, all these guys, Rick Martel for character. Just a bunch of different people that kind of molded into who I've become in the past year, 2 years or so, something like that.
How much tape study are you and your dad doing? Because I know he kind of cultivates and kind of has an input in what you're watching and what you're learning.
Yeah, so I'm definitely watching a bunch of different stuff. I'm going from like Mid-South to the NWA, WCW, early WWF. I watch Superstars, 4 or 5 minute matches, 6 minute matches, TV matches to learn how to wrestle in 6-7 minutes instead of trying to watch a 45-minute match.
Sure.
Where I'm not having any 45-minute matches. So
is your cardio up to? Do you think you could do one?
I mean, I've never been given a chance to, so I don't know if I could.
You think it's baptism by fire at this point?
I think I would have to definitely learn the experience, like kind of learn how to go that far, go that deep. I feel like that's a whole different way of setting up a match. I'm used to this 7 to 15 ish,
yeah,
instead of 30 to 45, which is a whole new ball game.
How much of your match are? And again, I know this is going back to the idea of you never really been given anything more than 15 minutes. How much of your match are you calling in the ring, as opposed to talking it over in the back? Because that's the other art that's on the independents dying, is calling it out in the ring, especially. And this isn't a knock on Gino because it's not like it's his fault, but this is a guy who comes from the era of calling it in the ring.
Yeah. So I think it depends on who I'm wrestling for the night. Definitely with all the new guys over at the school, it's spot for spot. Everything's called pretty much. Nothing's besides the heat. I think everything's pretty much called pre-game unless something gets messed up, or everything's pretty much called. Unless I'm in there with Gino, Andrew Anderson, Nunzio, guys like that, they're more of the, all right, let's see what happens.
Now, do you have a preference? Do you have a story in terms of, one night had to call the whole thing except the finish, or has that not happened to you yet?
It happened really early on, actually.
Really?
So Gino brought us to a show in Binghamton, and I wrestled an 8-man tag team match. I don't remember who was in it, but I walked through the curtain after the match, and Gino's like, all right, you got to go right back out there. Andrew Anderson's opponent left.
Uh-huh.
They had a whole match called, everything like that. His opponent left. No idea where he went. Gino's like, you got to wrestle Anderson. I was like, okay. We go in there. Anderson walks me through it, everything like that. At one point, he's like, take a back body drop. And I didn't have enough time to say I've never taken one before.
No way.
So I took my first ever back body drop in the ring on the fly because I had no time to say I've never done it.
Did you land flat back? How'd you take it?
There's no video, so I don't remember how I took it, but I've taken it since, and I would say I take it pretty decently.
Okay. Yeah, because that's another move that you don't see very often, and unless a guy knows how to take it, he's like, I ain't taking it.
Yeah, it just kind of scares me every time. Every time I know I have to do it in a match, it's just like I'm just waiting for that bump.
It actually, and you could ask Gino, Mike, all those old school guys, it used to be part of the training. that was a move you used to have to learn how to take, and that was part of why the crash pads came into independent wrestling, because you would take that bump on a crash pad and you would do the head position for the power bomb, and then the guy would counter out, and that's how you would get used to the motion and the compression, the shock absorption. And then eventually, after a dozen takes, whatever it was, as you got a rhythm of your bump and how to clap out, the cushion would come out and you'd have to land on the canvas. But a lot of schools don't do that anymore. But yeah, the back body drop used to be a core part of training.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because it would be like you would do body slam after body slam after body slam. Then you would graduate to the suplex or the gut wrench suplex. And then, of course, hip tosses and arm drags are part of the universal spot, the drill, and stuff like that. Um, and then, yeah, eventually when you would learn moves and things like that, just going over the guy's head 1,000 times was part of the drill. It would be a thing where if we were in the lineup and say it's Gino, I'd take one on the crash pad, get off, then you'd come in, you'd take one, and it would just be that circle of attack. Now, you're starting to venture out at other places. What's it like at other locker rooms? Because you had a very homeschool environment. I mean, you weren't like sheltered or protected at ECBW. It was trial by fire for everybody.
Yeah.
I can say that firsthand because I saw it. When you started venturing out, what was it like? Because I know that when I started venturing out, I would just get these culture shocks of how other wrestling companies, good and bad, run their shows, run their locker rooms. So what's that been like now that you're at a lot more places compared to obviously your rookie year?
It's definitely a lot different. I've noticed I get a little bit more nervous in locker rooms that I've never been a part of. I kind of sit to the back and find like those one or two people that I know of and just kind of hang around them, talk to my opponent. That's pretty much it. But once I'm in the locker room a couple more times, meet the more, have more opponents, they bring you over, introduce you to their friends, and then
Yeah.
you just kind of like branch out into the other friend groups and meet everybody all over the place. But
When you do, go ahead, keep going. I'm sorry.
seeing the way that the other promotions run, like I'm so used to walking in and there's the match posted on the wall,
Yeah.
and you see your time, you see when you're up. Going to these other places, you show up and it's like, all right, I'm gonna be match 1, and then 5 minutes later I'm match 7. 5 minutes
Yep.
later I'm match 22. Like, because there's 50 guys on the show, like it just doesn't.
Yeah.
It's always insane.
What was your first lucha show experience like? Because you're coming out there, you're doing this luchador show, which is night and day from regular indies. It's very Mexican wrestling style based. The multi-man matches, the tag matches are different. It's all masked characters, it's all Spanish based, and you come out, no offense, looking like a typical ass white boy, straight gringo, which might get you the easiest heat in the world. So, what was it like the first time you did it?
It was a tag team match. It was me and Paulie versus Joe Scott and Drew Marston.
How's
And
that work?
Drew was still a face at the time.
Okay.
So he was teaming with Joe. And it was just like a basic, we did like a WWF match. We didn't even do lucha because none of us knew how to do it.
Right.
So we just gave them a straight tag team match, and that was it. That's all we did. And
Did they eat up your heat, or did it take them a while to buy it?
I think they were just waiting for the lucha. They were waiting for what they paid for.
Right. Did you get a reaction at all?
I think we did. We had some spots that looked like they could have been lucha-y, like
Yeah.
head scissors, like rollovers, stuff like that. But for the most part, it was just basic WWF indie style wrestling. That was it.
Now you're pretty much in the thick of all of ECBW because you're on all the touring shows, all the spot shows. Plus, you're part of ECBW Hudson Valley, and then that core ECBW base that does the TV at Richfield Park, one of the original feds to get that building. What's the biggest difference between Hudson Valley, ECBW TV, and then the spot shows for you? Because you're pretty much a feature now on all of it.
Yeah. So for a while, I felt like the Hudson Valley shows is where I would go and I would be like one of the guys, like one of the the top guys, probably top 5 on the show. That's where I had the viral championship, everything like that. So that
Sure.
was our that would be like the show of the month that I'm like, all right, this is where I have to go all out because I'm a top guy here. But now starting in Jersey, I'm in the ring with guys like Kenny, Pittman, Felipe. Now I'm doing stuff with John Tella. And now it's like, all right, so I'm one of the core guys in Jersey now too. And then I go to the 5 boroughs, and now I'm a tag champ there. So I'm just
Right.
kind of the staple. Like, I can't even say that I'm just a Hudson Valley guy or a 5 boroughs guy. Like, I'm just an ECPW guy. I'm on every ECPW show there is.
Yeah, and there was a time where, be it by their own design or through booking, you were only at TV or you were only featured for spot shows. Then you were only featured for spot shows in certain towns. And then some guys are just only at Hudson Valley, as we know, which there's nothing wrong with. That's just the nature of the Fed, because Gino very much treats it territory based. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's just kind of how that is. Do you feel like that's a lot of pressure for you, or do you think you've overcome it at this point?
No, I think I've kind of overcome it. It forces me to get better because I have to somewhat be more of the in-ring, like, okay, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do this instead. And wrestling guys like Felipe and Kenny, it kind of gives me more of the, okay, this is how you structure a match. So if you showed me a match from like 2 years ago, I'd be like, yeah, I would never structure it like that now. Like, my moveset's evolved, the way I do heat evolved, everything like that.
Who do you think you've learned from the most in the last 4 years?
I would say probably in the past 2 years, it would be Felipe.
Really?
Felipe, Sonny, Kenny, and Ryman.
Really? Go on, expand on that.
So Felipe would be in there, and he'd be like, all right. There was one day I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't know what the move was. I was like, there's no way I could do this. Like, this is insane. Like, my body's not made for this. And he's like, we're the same height. If I could do it, you could do it. And I wound up being able to do it. Sonny always helps us with drills. Sonny's been on TV. Sonny knows how to do all these TV drills. So she would always bring the drills to the school that they were doing at TV the week before, make us work hard. Kenny and Ryman, obviously Ryman's like one of the wizards of wrestling. He studies this in his sleep. So he was able to teach us. He went to Germany and he came back and taught us all these different holds. Can I tell you what those holds are? Absolutely not. But it was definitely, they're all different styles of wrestling. They all have four different ways of wrestling, and it's helped a lot.
Oh yeah, minus the bond amongst those people, none of them wrestle the same. None of them.
Yeah.
Again, they've all got this great bond, but none of them wrestle the same. Who is someone in ECPW that you haven't worked yet that you feel like it's coming sooner than later?
I kind of feel like, depending on whether this whole best friends thing with John Tella goes, if he likes me, maybe we'll team together. If he one day decides he doesn't want to be my best friend, I could see us having a match or two down the road, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
Are you scared at the idea of becoming a babyface?
Oh, 100%.
Have you given it any thought of how to approach the act?
No, because I just don't know how I could. Like, everyone's like, oh, the umbrella is going to get over to the point where you're a babyface. And I'm just like, it could, but the way I use the umbrella in certain aspects is heelish. So I'd have to find a way to be more spotty and get over with the umbrella in cool, flashy ways instead of cheating ways.
So with that being said, let's address it, because it's come up three or four times now. The umbrella, you come out with it as your part of your entrance. It's a gimmick. I know the story. How does the umbrella come into play for you?
Okay, so it kind of started out as a joke. I was wrestling on a show in the rain outside at a fair in New York. And I was like, I don't want to get...
This is one of those loops at ECBW, right?
Yeah. And I was like, I don't feel like getting wet wrestling in the rain. This is kind of dangerous, but it was the last day of the fair and they wanted wrestling. Like they were like, we already paid for it, so you got to give it to us somehow. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go in because if I don't go in, I'm not going to get paid. So I'll go
Right.
in and I'll wrestle. And I wrestled in the rain. I went to my car, got my umbrella, and it was just going to be that day. I would wrestle with an umbrella and that would be it. And I come into the locker room, and after Tommy Dreamer was there, and he was like, that was amazing. You got to keep doing that. Like, you found cool, unique ways to use an umbrella. Like, I bumped and feed with the umbrella. I took the finisher through the umbrella up in the air, blocking the ref's view with chokes and
Yeah.
everything like that. And he's like, yeah, you got to keep doing it. So,
And then you worked Bull James too, right?
that was the day before without an umbrella.
Without. Okay. And who did you work with?
Justin Bon Jovi was the first match with the umbrella.
Okay. And since then, who are some of the notable names that have felt the wrath of the umbrella?
Who have I wrestled with the umbrella that's up there? I feel like I haven't wrestled a
notable name, but everyone's getting it. What's the reaction like at television with it?
People like it. I think some people are confused by it, or were confused for a couple of months, but now it's getting to the point where the umbrella has just become like more and more of the match.
Yeah.
I started doing old school with it, a rolling elbow, dusty punches because of Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah. And
this past weekend, I did John Cena's comeback with the umbrella in my hand.
That's interesting. That's I want to see that. Do you feel like you're the healthy mix of a great worker and a gimmick, or are you relying on the umbrella too much, do you think?
There's definitely been a lot of matches with the umbrella where I use it one or two times. Like if I have to work, I could go in there and work. But if it's with someone who's newer or wants to do the funny haha stuff, like I wrestled Joe Clean, and we used my umbrella, and he had all the cleaning supplies.
Right.
So we didn't have to go in there and do a technical masterpiece because we had two gimmicks.
Right.
Steve Off was a nice little mixture of the umbrella and wrestling. So it just kind of depends on who I'm in there with. Of course, with Felipe this weekend, it's probably going to be more wrestling, less umbrella. But if the umbrella can come into play and help me with some sort of an advantage, I'll bring it out.
Sure. Where do you, we're getting closer and closer to the 6 month mark of the year. What do you see for yourself as a performer for the second half of 2024?
I definitely want to do some sort of extra work. And I've talked to a couple people from other places because I now have eyes on me in two places, with Tommy Dreamer being an Impact and helping me so much with the umbrella, and Brian Idol in the NWA, who's helped me so much with promos and stuff like that. I definitely want to do more outside of indie wrestling. I want to go and help out at Impact. I want to go help out at the NWA, go and try and do extra work for WWE, AEW. It's just how to get there and how to get those opportunities is what I have to figure out.
Right. Now, we return back to the ECPW roster. Aside from John Tella, is there anybody that you faced in your first year that now 4 years later you're like, I want to give that another go?
Ray Calitri.
Okay. And I was there when you guys tore it up by the end of your rookie year. You guys had an awesome light heavyweight match.
It's the only time I've ever fought him. The only match I've ever had with Ray Calitri.
Was that the night you did the climb to the top rope, and then what did you jump off with?
It's the first time I ever did the Cody dive to the outside.
Right. And you just went and did it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We go back to it. Are you truly like, at some point you got to be a baby face, and would you do it, or would you rather, is that the first thing you're going to say no to?
I don't think I would say no. Like, if you want me to
You'd
be a
face
baby
it
face,
even if you didn't have the act right.
yeah, I feel like I could figure it out on the fly. Like, some of my favorite wrestlers of all time are baby faces. John
Sure.
Cena, Cody Rhodes, like these guys are huge baby faces. It's just I've only had one or two times in my career that I've been a face, and they were probably about 6, 7, 8 matches in, and that was it. So it's been a long time since I've been a face or had an opportunity to be a face, because everyone's just like, no, he's a heel, he's a bad guy.
Right.
That's it.
Out of all the venues you've worked for ECBW, what's been the best one?
Hmm. So this could be a little biased, but I did a show at St. Patrick's Gym in Highland Mills, and that's where I won my first championship. It's where I had my first big match in front of friends and family, and I think that would be probably my favorite place that I've wrestled for ECPW.
Okay.
But last month we went to a place on Long Island, and that had about 1,300 people in attendance. It
Okay.
was it was an ECPW rental. Brian Idol ran the show, and it was a teacher rumble where the teachers did a Royal Rumble with some professional wrestlers.
Oh yes, this was the viral clip. Yeah, I didn't know that Brian was had a hand in that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's the one that got that, and they used Gino's ring. And we were in there, and these teachers are like, "All right, yeah, we don't know how to do this," so they put a couple wrestlers in there to lead the way. I slide in the ring. First thing a teacher does is kick me right in between the legs.
Oh, okay.
Teacher kicks me right in between the legs, and then they come into the back afterwards, and they're like, "Oh, that was so much fun. It's just like a little play fighting. Like, that didn't hurt at all. Like, I can't wait to tell the kids at school tomorrow, like, we had so much fun. Like, it didn't
Yeah.
hurt." And I'm like, "You guys are gonna kill wrestling for all these people."
I love how they made it almost like an excursion. Like, yeah, we went scuba diving. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah. These teachers like were like, "Oh yeah, this is so much fun. Like, it didn't hurt at all." Like, it was an experience.
Worst venue you ever worked for ECBW or in general?
Worst venue. Huh. I feel like I haven't really had a worst,
Okay.
but
Give it time.
it could possibly be wrestling in the rain. But the wrestling in the rain did get me the umbrella. So it's kind of a win-win. Like, it was one of the worst experiences, but the payoff for it was huge.
Someone you haven't wrestled yet that you really, really want to at your current skill set.
Tommy Dreamer.
Someone above your current skill set that you really want to wrestle.
Let's see. Like, this is like being signed to a major company, wrestle this guy.
Sure.
Let's say The Miz.
If you couldn't be beautiful Buddy Thomas, your gimmick would have been.
I was about to be a cowboy. I don't know how that
Really?
happened. Yeah.
Is that your idea?
No. So I think there's like this like weird little obsession with cowboys, because everyone that walks in, it's like, "Oh, you could be a cowboy. You could be a cowboy."
Yeah.
And if you don't come up with a gimmick for yourself, you're going to get one. And I did not want to be handed the cowboy gimmick.
The cowboy.
So I was at a show, and I always wear a suit, nice pants, dress shoes, all that. And Becca Scott comes up to me, and she's like, "You're always looking so beautiful when you come to these shows." And I had already had the name Buddy Thomas picked out. So I just put beautiful on top of Buddy Thomas, and that's how I became Beautiful Buddy Thomas.
If I was to change my finisher, it would be.
I kind of want to change my finisher, honestly.
Have you given it thought?
It has to be something with the umbrella.
Okay.
I've done the umbrella elbow as a finish, but maybe it would be that. Change it to the umbrella elbow drop off the top rope.
One Fed you haven't worked yet that you really would like to.
Northeast Wrestling.
The furthest you traveled for wrestling.
North Carolina.
The furthest you're willing to travel for wrestling.
What's the furthest place in the world from New York?
Then you go in a car, I guess, cross country, right?
Yeah.
Right? Over the course of, would take it 4 days to get across, and then you do your match another 4 days back.
I'd go anywhere.
You do it in a week. There you go. How big of an influence in your career are Gino and your dad, Matt Lynch?
Well, I wouldn't be wrestling if it wasn't for them. So obviously, knowing Gino for 10 years, he's helped me out so much with learning how the business works and now wrestling in the business. I've wrestled him a couple times. And I obviously would not be wrestling if it wasn't for my dad. I mean, he's the one that showed me wrestling.
Yeah.
He brought me to all the shows, brought me to training for my first year. So without him, it definitely wouldn't be possible without him.
And have you decided, because you're still very, very young, have you given yourself the idea of, all right, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to wrestle for X amount of years? Do you have an idea, or are you just really, really still enjoying the ride those first 4 years in?
So I thought about this weekend because, like, I noticed 5 years ago I went to WrestleMania 35 as a fan. 5 years later, I'm in Philly with Sonny Kiss, Kenny Bangle, Ryman, Drew, and Demir, and we're at GCW. We went to SPO. We went to a couple other shows, hanging out for the weekend.
Sure.
So I was like, in 5 years, I want to be on WrestleMania. I was at WrestleMania 5 years ago. I was in town this past weekend. So I think in 5 years, if I could set my goal to be at WrestleMania, on WrestleMania, that would be huge.
Well, if that ain't the way to close it, I don't know what is. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing but onward and upward for somebody that I've always admired and I'm always rooting for. Beautiful Buddy Thomas. And hopefully he keeps that umbrella out so that the blessings can rain down on him. Ladies and gentlemen, the following conversation has been scheduled for one fall. Thanks for joining us.